My parents always favored my brother, until I finally made them see the truth. From as far back as I can remember, my parents favored my older brother, Daniel. To the world, he was the golden child, smart, athletic, charming. My mom would beam with pride every time she introduced him, and my dad talked about him like he had raised the next Einstein crossed with Tom Brady.
Me?
I was the other one. Even as a child, I noticed the difference. When Daniel got AB, it was a moment for concern, a sit-down at the dinner table to discuss what went wrong and how to improve. When I brought home an A, it was barely acknowledged, maybe a good job if I was lucky. I used to think I was imagining it, that maybe I was being overly sensitive, that maybe they didn't mean to act that way. But as we grew older, the gap widened. Daniel was always defended, always given the benefit of the doubt. When he crashed my dad's car at 17, they brushed it off as a learning moment and got it repaired within a week. When I accidentally broke a vase trying to move furniture at 18, I was given a full-blown lecture on being irresponsible and careless. They paid for Daniel's private college tuition without question. When it was my turn, they said money was tight and pushed me to apply for scholarships and take out student loans.
I didn't complain.
I worked 2 part-time jobs through college and learned how to stretch every dollar. My life became a series of self-built stepping stones while Daniel seemed to glide from one privilege to another. The real breaking point came when Daniel started his career and moved back home at 25 after quitting his 3rd job in 2 years. No ambition, no plan. Just a charming smile and excuses. My parents welcomed him with open arms, cooked his meals, did his laundry, and defended him to anyone who dared criticize. Meanwhile, I was 23, working 50-hour weeks, living in a small shared apartment, trying to make ends meet. And every time I visited, I'd hear things like, "You should try to help your brother network," or, "Why can't you be more supportive of him?" I wanted to scream, "Supportive? When has he ever supported me?" Still, I bit my tongue. I swallowed my bitterness, because part of me still craved their approval. I kept telling myself that one day they'd see what I'd become, that the truth would speak for itself. That day didn't come for a long time, the moment things shifted. 3 years ago, my father fell seriously ill. Heart problems. Sudden and severe. It was a wake-up call for all of us. My mom was panicking. Daniel was, well, Daniel. He visited once in a while, offered vague comfort, and returned to his usual carefree life. I stepped up. I took time off work, drove Dad to his appointments, sat in hospital waiting rooms for hours, managed medications, even installed safety equipment at their house. I became the caretaker, not out of duty, but out of love. I didn't hold grudges during those moments. I just wanted to help my father get better. Mom noticed. She never said anything directly, but I saw it in her eyes. Gratitude, guilt, maybe both. She started calling me more, asking for advice, trusting me in ways she never had before. Daniel, meanwhile, began asking me for money. At first it was subtle, just until I get my next freelance gig. Then it became routine. I helped once or twice, but eventually I said no. That was the turning point. He exploded, accused me of thinking I was better than him, of trying to turn our parents against him. When I calmly explained that I just couldn't keep enabling his choices, he hung up. Then came the manipulation. Daniel told our parents I was being cold and selfish, that I was trying to create distance in the family. At first, they were inclined to believe him. Old habits die hard. But this time, I didn't stay quiet. The confrontation. I invited them over for dinner one weekend. Just Mom and Dad. Daniel wasn't included. I cooked their favorite meal and sat them down. "There's something I need to say," I began. "And I need you to really hear me." They listened, uneasy. For years, I've felt like a second-class member of this family. I don't think it was intentional, but it was real. Every time Daniel made a mistake, he was forgiven, even celebrated. Every time I achieved something, it barely registered. I've worked hard to build a life. I've taken care of you when things got hard. And I didn't do it for praise. But I can't keep pretending the way things were didn't hurt. Silence. Mom's eyes welled up. Dad looked down at his hands. I continued, Daniel is your son. You love him, and I understand that. But loving him doesn't mean you have to ignore everything he does wrong. And it doesn't mean you have to overlook me. Still, silence. Then Dad spoke. I didn't realize we made you feel that way. Mom added quietly, I think I always knew, deep down. I just didn't want to admit it. I was honest with them. I told them I didn't want revenge. I wasn't trying to tear the family apart. I just wanted to stop feeling invisible. I wanted them to see me for who I really was, not just as Daniel's brother, but as their son. A son who mattered too. It was the first real, raw conversation we ever had. Change takes time. Things didn't magically become perfect after that. But they started to shift. They stopped making excuses for Daniel. When he asked for more money, they told him no. When he quit yet another job, they didn't blame bad management or office politics. They began holding him accountable. More importantly, they began seeing me clearly. Mom started calling just to talk, not to ask me for help with something, but to genuinely connect. Dad began asking for my opinions, not just giving his. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was being treated as an equal. Daniel, predictably, didn't like the change. Our relationship became distant. He accused me of turning our parents against him, of being manipulative. But I didn't fight back. I had spent too many years chasing his shadow. I wasn't going to waste more energy fighting for his approval. I had finally earned something far more valuable, my own sense of worth, and the acknowledgement I had long deserved. Looking back, now, years later, my relationship with my parents is stronger than it's ever been. They've apologized multiple times, not because I asked them to, but because they saw it on their own. We talk often, we laugh, and sometimes we cry about the past. But we've moved forward. As for Daniel, he's still finding his way. I hope he does someday. I really do. Because despite everything, he's still my brother. And I want him to find happiness too. Just not at the cost of mine. So to anyone out there who feels like they're always in someone else's shadow, I want to say this. You don't have to be the loudest voice to be heard. You don't have to fight for love with anger or resentment. Sometimes, speaking your truth, with honesty, strength, and vulnerability, is what finally changes everything. It took years, but my parents finally saw the truth. And now I finally see myself. Healing doesn't happen overnight. After that emotional dinner with my parents, things began to change, but slowly. Healing old wounds isn't something that happens in a single night, and I knew that. Still, for the first time in my life, I felt heard. And even more than that, I felt seen. My parents started putting in effort. Little things at first. My dad called to check in on me, instead of just calling to ask about Daniel. My mom started asking about my work and actually listened when I talked about it. They even came to a small award ceremony at my job when I was promoted, something they had never done for me before. I could feel their guilt. And while a part of me wanted to cling to that as payback for the years I spent being overlooked, I chose to let it go. Not because they deserved it right away, but because I deserved peace. Letting go of the pain didn't mean forgetting what happened. It just meant I was choosing not to carry it every single day. Daniel didn't take any of this well. When he found out I had spoken to our parents, he sent me a long, angry text calling me selfish, manipulative, and ungrateful. He said I was trying to ruin the family and that I had always been jealous of him. Jealous. That word hit hard. It wasn't the first time I'd heard it. Growing up, any time I voiced even a hint of frustration about how he was treated, I was told I was being jealous or dramatic. But this time, something inside me had changed. His words didn't sting the way they used to. I didn't reply. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I simply let him have his opinion, and I kept moving forward. My parents, to their credit, didn't take his side this time. In fact, when he tried to stir up tension between us again, they pushed back. Gently but firmly. This isn't about sides, Mom told him. It's about fairness. And it's time we started treating both our sons with equal respect. I don't think he expected that. Building a new bond. The biggest surprise wasn't just how my parents started treating me, it was how our relationship changed on a deeper level. Without the constant comparisons to Daniel, I was finally able to have an honest connection with them. I found out things I'd never known, like how my dad always admired my quiet persistence but didn't know how to show it. Or how my mom struggled with guilt because her own parents had favorites and she had promised herself she wouldn't repeat the pattern, but did anyway. They began to see me not just as their second son, but as a whole person. Someone who worked hard, who faced life with responsibility, and who loved them despite everything. We started sharing real conversations. I introduced them to some of my friends. My mom learned how to text emojis, which was both hilarious and oddly sweet. My dad started reading the books I recommended, something I never thought would happen. As for Daniel, his life kept following the same cycle. New job, early praise, then sudden burnout or drama, followed by quitting or getting fired. My parents stopped bailing him out, and that hit him hard. He didn't understand why the world stopped making excuses for him, why his charm wasn't enough anymore. He floundered. He blamed everyone, me, our parents, society, but never looked in the mirror. There was a part of me that felt sorry for him. Another part felt angry. He had been handed so many lifelines while I had to swim on my own. Yet here he was still sinking because he never learned how to stay afloat by himself. One day, he called me. Not to apologize, not to reconnect, just to ask for money again. I said no. I told him kindly but clearly, you need to stop expecting other people to fix your life. I spent years thinking you were the lucky one. But now, I see that I was the one who grew. He hung up on me. The more time passed, the more peace I found. Not because everything became perfect, but because I stopped needing it to be. I began to forgive, not just my parents, but myself. For staying silent for so long. For trying too hard. For thinking my worth depended on how much I could prove myself to people who weren't ready to see me. I built a life that made me proud. My career was stable. I had good friends who cared about me. I found a partner who loved me for who I was, not for who they thought I should be. My world became wider than just my family. And in that space, I finally started to heal. My parents changed, and I'm grateful for that. But the most powerful change came from within me. Now, years later, our family looks very different. My relationship with my parents is solid. We've set new patterns. There's more honesty, more openness, and a lot more laughter. Daniel still drifts in and out of our lives. I don't wish him harm, but I've set clear boundaries. I no longer chase after his approval or my parents. I simply live my life with clarity, peace, and purpose. If someone had told me years ago that one conversation would start to change everything, I wouldn't have believed them. But sometimes, the truth, spoken with love and courage, is the most powerful thing we can offer. If you've ever felt like the forgotten child, the background character in your own family story, let me tell you this: you matter. You don't have to become someone else to be worthy of love and respect. And sometimes, the hardest truth to accept is that your worth never depended on their validation. Speak your truth. Set your boundaries. Choose peace over resentment. Because once you see yourself clearly, it doesn't matter who used to overlook you, you'll never overlook yourself again. A few years after that pivotal conversation, our family traditions changed. Slowly but meaningfully. My parents started inviting me to spend holidays at their home with my partner. We no longer tiptoed around the old family patterns. There was space for honesty, laughter, and even reflection. Mom would sometimes bring up the past, not to make excuses, but to acknowledge it. I still think about how blind I was back then. She once told me while we cooked dinner together. I see it now so clearly. I just wish I had seen it sooner. Me too, I said gently. But we can't change the past. We can only choose what we do now. Dad, who used to be quiet and a little emotionally distant, made more effort to show pride. He came to one of my speaking events and surprised me with a handwritten note afterward. He'd never done anything like that before. I still keep the note in my desk drawer. The favoritism that once divided us faded, not because we forced it away, but because it was finally named, acknowledged, and faced head-on. And that was all I had ever really wanted, not perfection, just recognition and balance. Daniel's life remained a roller coaster. After another failed business venture, he disappeared from our lives for almost a year. My parents were worried, especially my mom. But this time, they didn't drop everything to fix it. They reached out, yes, but they also respected their own limits. Eventually, Daniel returned. Humbled. Tired. Less proud, but more honest.
He called me.
Not for money. Not to argue.
Just to talk.
He admitted he had been angry, not just at me but at himself. He said he didn't know how to handle not being the center of everything anymore. I think I was addicted to being the favorite, he said quietly. And when I lost that, I didn't know who I was. It was the first time I ever heard him take real accountability. I'm not asking for anything, he said. I just want to say I get it now. I'm sorry. I didn't say, it's okay. Because it hadn't been. But I said, thank you for saying that. It means more than you know. It didn't fix everything between us. There was too much history to pretend it never happened. But that moment was the first stone in rebuilding something healthier. Maybe not closeness, but understanding. And sometimes that's enough. Becoming the person I needed. Looking back, I realized that all the pain, distance, and resentment taught me something powerful. How to become the person I needed when I was younger. I now mentor a few younger professionals at work. People who, like me, were overlooked or doubted. I try to give them what I once craved: support, encouragement, and belief. And when I have children someday, I know exactly what kind of parent I want to be. One who sees each child for who they are, not who I expect them to be. One who listens, apologizes when necessary, and never lets one child feel like a shadow in someone else's spotlight. Because favoritism isn't just unfair, it's damaging. And I refuse to pass that down. This journey taught me that speaking up doesn't make you difficult, that setting boundaries doesn't make you unkind, and that the love we fight so hard to earn from others must also be given to ourselves. I don't need my parents to validate me anymore. I appreciate their effort and their growth, but I don't chase their praise. I've built my own life, one I'm proud of, with people who respect me not for what I do, but for who I am. So if you're reading this and you've always felt like second best, please hear this. You're not second best. You were just waiting for the right time, the right voice, and the right moment to speak your truth. And once you do, everything begins to change. My story isn't about revenge or resentment. It's about growth, mine, my family's, and even Daniel's. It's about turning pain into purpose and silence into strength. Most of all, it's about realizing that sometimes the people who overlooked you simply needed to be shown how to see. And now that they do, I've finally stepped out of the shadow and into the light where I've always belonged.